So, recent reports show that thousands of white South Africans who previously immigrated are now returning back home. This trend comes despite claims made by people such as President Donald Trump that white South Africans are facing widespread persecution. What does this mean for South Africa's migration patterns, and does it challenge some of the narratives which are circulating internationally? To help us answer that question, we're joined this morning by political analyst Professor Andre Duvenhage from Northwest University. Prof,
Morning, Aisha. Nice talking to you again.
and you as well. Welcome to News and Views on Salam Media. Let's dive straight in, Prof. What are the main reasons, in your opinion, that we're seeing white expats returning back home?
Okay, I think if we look at these patterns and we talk about statistics, and the statistics are a bit tentative, but the argument is that about 500,000 white South Africans left the country. Then you will constantly find that people are going away and they are coming back. And that is not only applicable to the United States of America, this is also the pattern with regard to Australia, to New Zealand, to England. And it has a lot to do with economic circumstances and their job position within these particular countries, visums, etc. And we also have seen within Western European countries a huge sensitivity with regard to immigration. And I believe it's also a pattern that people that are leaving for another country at some point in time believe, no, it was better staying at home. But this is not to say automatically that the challenges at home is not real and a huge problem. And if we look at the fundamental perspective, and now I'm talking as a white South African, I have no doubt that the Constitution in its preamble is saying and talking about a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic South Africa. And what is clear is that we at the moment have more than 140 racially defined legislation, to the extent that you cannot qualify for positions because of your race. You need still, as was the case in apartheid, to identify your race, your gender, etc., when applying positions for positions. So, okay, when people are coming back, that is not to nullify these problems. That is just to say that the opportunities here, despite circumstances, is still better, and there are probably family ties and a number of pull-push factors simultaneously at play here.
So, would you say it's fair to suggest, Prof, that it's economic factors on both sides that are causing the situation? So, economic factors based on the restrictions you've just outlined within South Africa that are basically pushing people out, if you want to put it simply in those terms, and then going abroad and finding that perhaps the grass is not always greener, cost of living being so much more expensive does not necessarily translate to a better quality of life abroad, then pushing people to come back?
Absolutely. It's a combination of push and pull factors, and every individual has his or her own situation to deal with. For some, it will work better. Others will face more challenges. It's also in terms of personality. Do you adapt to a changing environment? And although in my family, and I'm talking about the bigger extended family, the majority of them are feeling strong about circumstances in South Africa, but they still believe that they will stay in this country in order to make a constructive contribution to this country. And this is not to say that they aren't supporting what solidarity and AfriForum said and currently presenting to the United States and to the new appointed ambassador, Brent Bozell. And these issues are things related to rural safety. We think about the farm murders. We think about chants like kill the boer, kill the farmer, which is legally in South Africa. And to me, completely unacceptable. At the moment, I know about a research institution that is presenting a report about broad-based Black economic empowerment, showing clearly how this is influencing and benefiting a very small elite at the cost of a majority in a country where the situation is that we have one of the biggest unemployment rates in the world. But then at the same time, the report also mentioned the possibility for economic and financial cooperation. But this is not only about the United States. We are talking here about bigger migration patterns. And I think, as is the case with Russia, China, and other major countries, also the United States of America is facing its own set of challenges. And we know that violence are also prominent within the United States of America. It's not a 100% safe country.
Absolutely. No. Prof, we want to just go for a quick ad break, and then when we come back, perhaps we can unpack that a little further.
That's right.
For the first time, I can dream again.
The Africa Muslims Agency Orphan Hope Program provides the food, clothing, and basic support needed by thousands of children across the world. Every child deserves a chance at a hopeful future.
For 50,000 rands, you can transform our lives with the AMA Orphan Hope Program.
Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil, triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying, or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Freedom Stationery supply Marlin and Marlin Kids pens to me and my school friends. They supply just about everything we need to help us get a better education, from books to files to rulers. In fact, any any accessory we need. Freedom Stationery. Education for the nation. What does accessory mean?
With Ashraful Aid this Ramadan, your zakat changes lives. It feeds families facing hunger, restores dignity to those in need, and brings hope where it is needed most. From food relief to essential support, your zakah reaches communities with care, transparency, and impact. Give with confidence, give with trust. Make your zakah count this Ramadan. Give your zakah to Ashraful Aid and help change lives today.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
We're talking to Professor Andre Duvenhage of Northwest University this morning on News and Views, discussing how white South African expats are heading back home seemingly en masse. I know before the break, Prof, you brought up safety, and safety is often cited as a big reason why South Africans choose to leave the country in the first place. They feel threatened, they feel affected by high crime rates, they have been in a situation or know of someone being in a situation close to them that they want to get far away from. And in a News 24 article yesterday, Andrew Veach, a white South African who left South Africa for the US, is now returning back, even though he was held at gunpoint in South Africa. He says that mass shootings in public places and violence by US immigration officers are seemingly more scary to him. Can you speak a bit more to this expectation of safety being better on the other side that's turning out to be a reason why people are choosing to come back?
Aisha, yeah, there's no doubt that we are currently experiencing some of the most fundamental change in probably the history of man in a number of centuries. And together with change, there's uncertainty, and with uncertainty, you many times get what we call identity politics, and identity can take on different forms. And the moment you have identity or identities, then you are entering a period of conflict. And when you have conflict, one way of dealing with conflict is violence. And this is escalating at so many levels throughout the world. The world is a violent place. This is by no means unique to the United States, but I think if you make a hierarchy of states that is less safe, there's no doubt, according to international data and criteria, that some of the most unsafe places in the world include places like Afghanistan and South Africa. And the fact of the matter is that in the United States of America, it is a lot lower, but also depending in which area you are living. And I can also apply this to South Africa. If you are in parts of, for example, the Northern Cape, you are not going to experience violence. But when you are working on the Cape Flats, it may be a completely different scenario. So sometimes we need to be a lot more specific. But conflict and violence is a tendency of our times. And we have seen in recent months and years how this is escalating into bigger and bigger wars all the day. But it's also prominent at the social level. It's prominent on a gender level. It's prominent on a cultural level in what the well-known author and political scientist Samuel Huntington referred to as a clash of civilizations. So these are patterns of the day. And I think a lot of people coming back to South Africa has to do with what they leave behind in terms of social networks and social security in their place where they were born and which they know very well. When you enter a new environment, it's a new set of challenges.
No, absolutely. I can't agree with you more, Prof. I think when we use the word safety, we can apply it in so many different ways, including, as you rightfully point out, psychological safety, that sense of where do I belong? How do I reconcile where I am with who I am? And do you think that is a big driver of why people are coming back? Do you think people are longing for this feeling of what home is?
I think without any doubt that to be the main case. Maybe even more so than safety, but this is relating to what you refer to, and you are correctly referring to it as psychological safety. You don't need necessarily a geographical or a political home. What you need is an emotional home, a psychological home. A home where people understand you, where they speak your language, where you have a common culture and tradition. When I lectured for a time in Canada, that was many years back, about 2 decades back, one of my main constraints was I do not know my environment. I do not understand the cultures. I do not know the history. And to me, all of this is creating safety and security in a way, because I know in my own country how to manage myself even under difficult circumstances. But going to Canada, and if you just gossip about a blonde, then you are in trouble. In the South African context, you aren't in trouble, or maybe not to the same extent, but these are small, sometimes cultural differences with big implementations. And then also it's about a broader culture. Do you fit into that culture? And my take is that most South Africans has a very unique culture, and it's sometimes, and in most cases, difficult to adapt to a changing environment.
I wonder if we can take that and apply it to the United Kingdom. I think for many South Africans, maybe moving over to a place like Australia, where the climate is relatively similar because of its geographic positioning, is maybe a different experience than moving over to Northern Hemisphere climates, particularly. I mean, you point out Canada, that must have been particularly harsh weather compared to what we're used to in South Africa. But even if you look at the United Kingdom, which I think is responsible for the largest number of South African expats, people talk about this brain drain. I was talking with someone I know yesterday who's a chartered accountant who worked with multiple other young female chartered accountants who've now gone on to build their careers in the United Kingdom. And I asked her, but why or how? Like, is it not difficult? And she said it's in fact very easy. In the UK, they want young qualified chartered accountants because of the way that they're trained. And so, do you think this brain drain effect that's referred to is something that is maybe it's temporary? It's a season in a young person's life where they'll go over and have the experience and come back, or do you think there's a real threat that they'll leave for good?
I think some of them will come back, but I generally believe that this is a big threat to South African society. We have seen the problems on so many levels. And if you hear a politician talking, they will always say capacity, and we need to develop, and we need this, and we need that. But the problem is our policies are in most cases excluding people with knowledge and skill because of race. And this is leaving them the only opportunity to leave the country. And sometimes this is happening to black people also, who doesn't have the right political affiliation. The question of Britain is an interesting one. You must take into consideration that many people in South Africa is related some way or another to a British tradition. Even the Afrikaners, in a lot of our culture, we are British in our orientation, driving on the left of the road, eating an English breakfast, that type of thing. It seems to be very general to us. So yes, we are fitting into England a lot better than, for example, Europe or maybe some other places. And then we must take into consideration that there's also other groupings that has a long history with Britain.
Absolutely. Professor Andre Duvenhage, it's certainly a much more layered conversation than meets the eye. There's the economic factors you have to look at. There's the psychological factors you have to look at. And I think, the act of uprooting oneself and moving from one part of the world to another, whether it's to go home or to leave home, either way has a major impact on a person. And so recognizing those complexities, particularly in an era where race is weaponized and where weaponized by people external to the situation on the ground, deserves a lot more conversation and complexity. Yeah. So thank you so much, Prof, for your insight this morning.
Thank you.
We'll break now for a short ad break and more when we come back.